Do you remember the scent of old wood and vanilla from your childhood home? What does loyalty cost when sweat and devotion still don't seem to matter? Leah stood in the shadowed foyer of her grandma's craftsman property. The staircase creaked beneath the weight of every argument. Sunlight caught the dust motels she'd once chased from Helen's kitchen. The sting of her Frank Boyd's words echoed louder than any clock. Sign it over to your sister. Is a family's legacy measured by time spent, or simply by blood? Tonight, Leah faced the truth. Family can be ruthless, and nothing smells the same once innocence is gone. My name is Ila Monroe. At 29, I never expected to fight my entire family over a property. For a decade, I visited Grandma Helen every single Sunday. My sister Sarah couldn't be bothered. When Grandma passed, she left me her home. I thought everyone would understand why. I was wrong. At the estate settlement, my Frank Boyd, Frank, stood up. He said, "Sign it over. Your sister needs it more." Nobody expected what I did next. Before I reveal what was in that note, tell me where you're watching from. Drop a comment, and subscribe if you've ever had family take advantage of your kindness. Growing up, I had a special bond with my grandmother. Helen Dupree wasn't just family. She was my best friend, my confidant, the one person who truly saw me. As a little girl, I spent weekends at her beautiful craftsman property. We baked her famous apple crumble bars from a secret recipe. I learned to tend her magnificent garden, hydrangeas and roses everywhere. She told me stories of her youth, simpler times. When I started nursing school, our weekends became a sacred ritual. Every Sunday at 11 a.m., I arrived, without fail. We cooked lunch together, her famous pot roast, or chicken and dumplings. We spent afternoons in the garden, or on her wraparound porch, drinking sweet tea, talking about everything and nothing. In winter, we sat by her fireplace, wrapped in handmade quilts she'd stitched herself. We read books, watched old movies on her ancient TV. For 10 whole years. I never missed a Sunday. Unless I was deathly ill, I always called. Those Sundays were my sanctuary, my stability in a chaotic world of hospital shifts. Grandma Eleanor was my anchor, my safe harbor. My sister Sarah Boyd, on the other hand, could barely be bothered to call Grandma on holidays. 3 years younger than me, Sarah Boyd had always been the family favorite, despite her complete lack of responsibility or consideration for others. Where I worked hard through nursing school, Sarah Boyd dropped out of college 3 separate times, each venture funded fully by our parents. Where I held down the same job at Memorial Hospital for 7 years, Sarah Boyd bounced between retail positions, waitressing gigs, and multi-level marketing schemes, never lasting more than a few months at any of them. "I'm finding myself," she would declare, whenever anyone questioned her life choices. By 32, her only consistent achievement was consistently disappointing everyone who counted on her. Our parents enabled this behavior at every turn. When Sarah Boyd couldn't make rent, they paid it. When she maxed out credit cards, they settled the debt. When she needed a car after wrecking her previous one while texting, they bought her a new one. Meanwhile, I put myself through school, bought my modest Honda with my own savings, and rented a small but clean 1-bedroom apartment 15 minutes from the hospital where I worked. The pattern was always the same. Sarah Boyd would create chaos, and everyone would expect me to be the bigger person. When Sarah Boyd borrowed my prom dress and returned it stained, I was told to let it go. When she borrowed money from my graduation fund, I was told family helps family. When she showed up 3 hours late to my nursing school graduation because she was hungover, I was expected to understand, because that's just how Sarah Boyd is. Helen Dupree was the only one who saw through this dynamic. "You know, Cassie," she told me once while we were planting tulip bulbs for next spring, "being the reliable one is both a blessing and a curse. People take advantage of those they know won't let them down." She looked at me with those wise blue eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. Just remember that your worth isn't measured by how much you give to people who only take. When Grandma's health began to decline last year, there was never any question about who would step up. I took family and medical leave from the hospital to care for her in her final months. I administered her medications, drove her to doctor appointments, cooked meals that would tempt her failing appetite, and sat with her through long nights when pain kept her awake. I read to her when her eyesight became too poor for her to read herself, and I helped her write letters to old friends she wanted to say goodbye to. Sarah Boyd visited exactly once during those 3 months. She stayed for 45 minutes, spent most of that time on her phone, and left early because she had plans. Our parents visited more frequently, but always with the unspoken expectation that I would handle the difficult parts of caregiving. When Helen Dupree passed peacefully in her sleep with me holding her hand, I felt a piece of my heart break off. At the funeral, Sarah Boyd cried dramatically, telling anyone who would listen how close she and Granny Elle had been. I was too grief-stricken to call her out on her performance. The tension in the family was immediate. The day after the funeral, my mother called to ask if Grandma had talked about her will. "Sarah Boyd's really counting on getting some help," she said, not even trying to be subtle. "You know how tight things are for her right now." I honestly didn't know what Grandma had planned. We had never discussed her will or inheritance. Our time together had been about living, not preparing for her death. All I knew was that whatever happened, the loss of her presence in my life would leave a void that no material possession could ever fill. Little did I know that my grandmother's final act would force me to finally stand up for myself against the family that had taken me for granted for so long. The estate settlement was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at Mr. Harrington's law office downtown. I arrived 15 minutes early, my hands clutching a tissue and my heart heavy with grief. The office was all dark wood and leather chairs, the kind of place that had probably looked exactly the same for the past 50 years. I chose a seat near the window, watching raindrops race down the glass and trying to prepare myself emotionally for whatever was about to happen. My parents arrived next, my father in his one good suit that he wore to weddings and funerals, and my mother in a black dress that made her look pale and drawn. They both hugged me briefly before taking seats across the room, whispering to each other in the way they always did when they were strategizing something. Sarah Boyd arrived last 10 minutes late with her boyfriend Troy in tow. I was surprised she'd brought him since he'd never even met Grandma Eleanor. He was her latest soulmate in a long line of questionable relationships. Troy had a sleeve of tattoos and worked sporadically as a bartender. They'd been dating for 4 months, and Sarah Boyd had already moved into his apartment with her 3 kids from 2 previous relationships. Sarah Boyd barely acknowledged me, instead pulling out her phone and immediately starting to text her long acrylic nails clicking against the screen. Her attitude made it clear this was a chore she wanted to get over with as quickly as possible. Mr. Harrington entered precisely at 2 Sir, carrying a folder and wearing glasses that kept sliding down his nose. "Thank you all for coming today," he began formally. "We're here to discuss the last will and testament of Eleanor Margaret Wilson. Before I begin, I'd like to express my personal condolences. Eleanor was a client of mine for over 30 years, and I considered her a friend as well." The heavy quiet in the leather-scented office snapped. Sarah's jaw was clenched, her knuckles white. She stared daggers at Mr. Harrington as he paused, his eyes flicking toward her with an unreadable tension. Could this get any worse? Then he spoke again. "There is an addendum." He reached into the folder, pulling out a small, aged bundle tied with faded ribbon. "For my granddaughter, Sarah. A cedar box containing every note I wrote to her over the years. Letters she never opened. Letters returned unread." The air in the room warped. It was no longer about the property or the money. Love, thick and unspoken, now hung between them. It wasn't her entitlement being addressed, but a grandmother's decades of private wishes and a lifetime of regret. Sarah's defiant expression shattered. Her eyes, wide and suddenly glistening, dropped to the stack of envelopes. Her mother's shaky handwriting covered each one. All those years of silence. And the answer was right here. What had she missed? My father, Frank, stood frozen, his argument dying on his lips. The fight drained from the room, replaced by the soft, haunting scent of rain and old paper. Mr. Harrington gently placed the letters on the table. The real inheritance wasn't in a bank. It was in this box. A final chance to hear a mother's voice. We reviewed the will multiple times, and she was very clear about her wishes. My father turned to me. Then his face flushed. Ila Monroe, you need to do the right thing here. Sign the property over to your sister. She needs it more than you do. I sat there in shock, unable to process what was happening. We were supposed to be mourning Grandma, remembering her life, honoring her wishes. Instead, this had immediately turned into a fight over her possessions. Frank Boyd, I don't think I started to say, but Sarah Boyd cut me off. You already have an apartment, she snapped. What do you need a 4-bedroom property for? I have 3 kids crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment with Troy. You're being selfish. My mother joined in her voice, taking on the guilt-inducing tone she had perfected over the years. Honey, your sister has Lily, Jaden, and Mason to think about. They need a stable home. You know, your grandmother would want those children to have a good place to grow up. I looked around the room in disbelief. Troy was now standing with his arms crossed, looking at me like I was some kind of monster. My Aunt Susan and Cousin Beth, who had been quiet until now, exchanged uncomfortable glances. This isn't the time or place for this discussion. Mr. Harrington intervened, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his office. The will is legal and binding. If you have concerns about its validity, you're welcome to contest it in court. Though I must advise you that Eleanor took every precaution to ensure her wishes would be respected. My father dismissed this with a wave of his hand. We don't need courts. We're family. Ila Monroe knows what the right thing to do is. He fixed me with a stern look that took me right back to childhood when his disapproval was the worst punishment imaginable. Cousin Beth spoke up suddenly. I think we should all take some time to process this. It's only been a week since we lost Aunt Eleanor. Maybe we should table this discussion for now. Sarah Boyd shot her a venomous look. Easy for you to say when you're not the one living paycheck to paycheck with 3 kids to feed. As the arguing continued around me, I felt like I was underwater. Sounds muffled and movements slowed. This was not how I expected today to go. Part of me wanted to stand up and scream that Grandma Eleanor had made her choices for a reason, that I had been there for her when no one else was. But another part, the people-leasing part that had been conditioned since childhood to keep the peace at all costs, was already calculating how to give in without completely losing myself in the process. Mr. Harrington ended the meeting when it became clear nothing productive would come from continuing. As we filed out of his office, my mother caught my arm. "We expect you to come to dinner on Friday," she said, her voice leaving no room for refusal. "We'll discuss the transfer details then." I nodded numbly and watched them leave Sarah Boyd, already loudly complaining to Troy about how unfair everything was. I stood alone in the parking lot, rain soaking through my thin jacket, feeling more isolated than I ever had before. The days following the estate settlement were a blur of emotional warfare. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from family members, each one adding to the growing weight on my shoulders. My mother called every morning before my shift at the hospital and every evening after I got home, her tactics alternating between guilt trips and angry demands. "Your sister cried herself to sleep last night," she informed me on Wednesday. "She's worried sick about where the kids are going to live if their landlord follows through on the rent increase. On Thursday, I just don't understand how you can be so selfish after everything your father and I have done for you." By Friday morning, she had escalated to, "Your grandmother would be ashamed of your behavior. She raised you better than this." That one cut deep. Rain drummed on the car roof, muffling Leah's shaky breaths. Her father's ultimatum replayed in her mind. This family takes care of its own. Sarah's digital daggers had already drawn blood, comments multiplying, friends choosing sides. Leah wiped her eyes. Outside, the hospital glowed like a beacon and a prison. If Grandma Helen could see this, would she understand her granddaughter's silence? The question pressed tighter. How much more could Leah lose before she finally pushed back? The following days were a fog of emotional warfare. Her phone buzzed constantly. Her mother's calls were a brutal rotation, guilt trips, and angry demands. Your sister cried herself to sleep. Then, your grandmother would be ashamed. That one cut the deepest. Her father was more direct. His voice held that old stern authority. We sacrificed everything for you girls. Sarah Boyd needs this property. It's not a request. Meanwhile, Sarah waged a social media war. Tearful posts about selfish people, about explaining to her babies why they might lose their yard. Her friends rallied with outrage. They only saw her perfectly crafted story. The most brutal blow came Thursday evening. Leah arrived home to find her entire family camped outside her door. Aunt Cassie, 7-year-old Lily, cried, running to hug her. Despite the anger, Leah's heart melted. None of this was the kid's fault. Sarah's voice was saccharine sharp. We thought you might want to spend time with the niece and nephews you're making homeless. She said it loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. Leah let them in. Her small apartment felt instantly cramped. 5-year-old Jaden began touching everything. 2-year-old Mason just clung to his Frank Boyd's leg, confused. Kids, Sarah announced, go explore Aunt Cassie's place. The grown-ups need to talk. Sarah Boyd instructed, and the children scattered Lily, heading straight for my bedroom. Once they were out of earshot, Sarah Boyd's smile disappeared. This is ridiculous, Cassie. Look at this place. It's perfect for one person. What are you going to do with Grandma's big property? Rattle around in it all by yourself while my kids are crammed into a moldy apartment with paper-thin walls. I haven't even decided what I'm doing yet, I protested weakly. Everything's happened so fast. Troy, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Sarah Boyd told me how you always were the favorite growing up. Got all the attention, all the opportunities. Maybe it's time you thought about someone besides yourself for once. I stared at him, speechless. This was so far from the reality of our childhood that I didn't even know how to respond. Was this really what Sarah Boyd had told him? That she was the neglected one? The visit lasted an excruciating hour, during which Jaden managed to knock over and break a ceramic vase. My nursing school friends had given me at graduation, and Mason had a diaper blowout on my couch. Neither Sarah Boyd nor Troy made any move to clean up either mess. As they were leaving, Sarah Boyd paused at the door. Mom and Frank Boyd expect us for dinner tomorrow night. Don't be late, and maybe by then you'll have come to your senses. The pressure wasn't just coming from my immediate family. Aunt Susan called to just check in, but quickly turned the conversation to how Sarah Boyd has always struggled. Poor thing, and how sharing our blessings is what family does. Uncle Robert texted that I should do right by your sister because blood is thicker than water. The only person who reached out without an agenda was my cousin Beth. She called on Friday afternoon as I was getting ready for the dreaded family dinner. How are you holding up? She asked, genuine concern in her voice. Honestly, not great, I admitted, relieved to finally be able to tell someone the truth. I figured Beth sighed. The car idles in the dim driveway, headlights cutting nervous shapes across the chipped porch paint. Leah grips the wheel, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The familiar silhouette of the Craftsman property feels strange tonight. Empty. It used to smell of fresh coffee and warm apple crumble bars. Now the air is heavy. It's tense with unspoken secrets. What's waiting inside? Is she ready to face the memories, the family drama she's about to stir up? You think so? Leah asked, her voice barely a whisper. I know so, Beth insisted. I saw you with Helen every Sunday for years. You moved in when she got sick. Sarah showed up once and cried at the funeral like they were best friends. It was gross. Beth's validation brought fresh tears. I don't know what to do. They make me feel like a monster, a selfish person. That's because they know you'll cave. Beth said bluntly. You always do. Whatever you decide, make sure it's what you want, not what they bully you into. After hanging up, Leah found herself driving. She pulled into the neglected driveway. The garden was already overgrown. Rose bushes needed pruning. A scatter of dead leaves littered the porch, something Grandma Helen would never allow. She used her key and stepped inside. The air was a familiar mix of lavender, old books, and lemon polish. She moved slowly, touching every memory. Her apron still hung by the pantry. Her reading glasses rested on the side table. A bookmark peeked from her unfinished novel. Standing in the bedroom doorway, Leah looked at the hand-stitched quilt. She felt that loss, a deep, physical ache. But then a new feeling grew, a certainty. Grandma Helen knew exactly what she was doing. This was her choice. This was her final stand. The smell of roast chicken and tension mingled in the air as I stepped into the foyer, the echo of Sarah's laughter bouncing down the hallway. My Frank Boyd looked up from the kitchen counter, his eyes sharper than usual. Before I could put down my purse, Sarah crossed her arms, already bracing for battle. Who would speak first, and would it be to welcome me or to tear me apart? She hadn't done it to cause a rift. Grandma Helen did it because our love filled this property. She wanted that love to live on. Locking the door behind me, I felt so torn. A lifetime of keeping the peace fought with my loyalty to her last wish. Driving to my parents' property, I was still unsure, but a new resolve began to stir deep inside. I pulled up at 6:30, sharp. The familiar colonial looked just the same. Blue shutters, neat hedges. Frank Boyd's Buick and Sarah's messy SUV were already there. I parked behind them, taking one deep breath of the cool evening air. I could smell rain coming. This wasn't a family dinner. It was an ambush. The tension hit me the second I opened the door. Mom was in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables. Frank Boyd sat at the table with a stack of papers. I could hear Sarah's voice upstairs, probably on the phone. There she is, Frank Boyd said. He didn't get up. We were starting to think you wouldn't show. I said I would be here, I replied. My jacket felt heavy on the rack. Where are the kids? Troy took them to his mother's, Mom called out. We thought it'd be better to talk without distractions. Right, no witnesses. Dinner was a silent, tense affair. Mom made pot roast, my favorite. That alone put me on edge. She only makes it when she wants something big. We ate in that strange quiet. The only sound was the rustle of leaves outside the window. Then my father cleared his throat. Ila Monroe, your mother and I have been thinking about this situation with Grandma's property. He began using his reasonable voice that always preceded something unreasonable. We understand you might be attached to the place because of your relationship with your grandmother, but we need to look at this practically. I took a bite of pot roast to avoid responding immediately. The fact is, he continued, Sarah Boyd has 3 children and no stable housing situation. You're single with a good career and already have a place to live. It just makes sense for Sarah Boyd to have the property. Not to mention, my mother chimed in, Sarah Boyd could really use the financial security. If she had the property, she wouldn't have to worry about rent. She could focus on finding a good job and providing for the children. I set down my fork. Sarah Boyd has had 10 years to find a good job. Mom, what makes you think having Grandma's property will suddenly make her responsible? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That's unfair, Ila Monroe, my father said sharply. Your sister has had some setbacks, but she's trying her best. Is she? I asked, surprising myself with the challenge in my voice, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like she's spent her entire adult life avoiding responsibility while everyone rushes to bail her out. My mother's face flushed with anger. How dare you speak about your sister that way? You have no idea what it's like to raise 3 children on your own. She's not on her own, I pointed out. She has Troy now, and before that it was Derek, and before that Jason. Not to mention she has you 2 who have never said no to her about anything. We've helped both our daughters equally, my father insisted, though we all knew that was a lie. Sarah Boyd chose that moment to make her entrance sauntering into the dining room with the timing of someone who had been listening from the hallway. "Talking about me?" she asked with a false brightness. "We're discussing the property situation," my mother said, her tone immediately softening. "Oh," that Sarah Boyd said, dropping into a chair and helping herself to food. "Has she agreed to sign it over yet?" "Troy's already talking about which bedroom would be best for his home studio." I nearly choked on my water. "His what?" Sarah Boyd waved a hand dismissively. "Troy's starting a podcast about craft beer. He needs a quiet space to record." The casual way she said this, as if it were perfectly reasonable to expect me to give up my inheritance so her boyfriend of 4 months could have a podcast studio, left me momentarily speechless. "Actually," my father said, pulling the stack of papers toward him, "I've had the transfer documents drawn up. My friend Bill at the bank helped me with them." He slid the papers across the table toward me along with a pen. "We can take care of this tonight and be done with it." I stared at the documents, my name and Sarah Boyd's printed in stark black and white with an empty signature line at the bottom. The presumption of it all hit me like a slap. "You already had papers drawn up?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper without even talking to me first. "We're talking now," my mother said impatiently. "And frankly, Ila Monroe, I don't understand why this is even a discussion. Your sister needs the property. You don't. It's as simple as that." "Yeah, don't be selfish," Sarah Boyd chimed in, her mouth full of pot roast. "It's not like you earned that property anyway. It was just luck that Grandma liked you better." Something inside me snapped. "Luck? You think it was luck that I spent every Sunday with her for 10 years? That I took leave from my job to care for her when she was dying? That I was there holding her hand when she passed while you couldn't be bothered to visit more than once?" Sarah Boyd rolled her eyes. "Here we go, with the martyr act. You always have to be the perfect one, don't you, St. Ila Monroe? So selfless, so caring." "That's enough," my father interrupted. "This bickering isn't helping anything." "Oh, I think it's helping a lot," I said, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "It's helping me see things very clearly. Sarah Boyd, when was the last time you visited Grandma before she got sick? Do you even remember?" Sarah Boyd shifted uncomfortably. "I was busy with the kids." She understood that. "That wasn't what I asked. When was the last time?" "I don't know. Maybe Christmas 2 years ago. Why does it matter? It matters because you're sitting here claiming you deserve her property when you couldn't spare an hour to visit her in years. And now I find out you've already promised your boyfriend he can turn a bedroom into a podcast studio." My mother interjected. "Ila Monroe, you're being dramatic. The important thing is that the property stays in the family and benefits the most people. 3 children and 2 adults versus just you. The math is simple." "Actually," I said, a memory suddenly surfacing, "Sarah Boyd did visit Grandma one other time that I know of. About 6 months before she got sick. Isn't that right, Sarah Boyd?" Sarah Boyd's face went blank for a moment before her eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about. Grandma told me about it. She said you stopped by unexpectedly on a Tuesday. She was so excited to see you that she made your favorite lemon bars from scratch. But it turned out you weren't there for a visit at all, were you? You needed money because you'd maxed out your credit cards again." "That's a lie," Sarah Boyd said, but her flushed face told a different story. "Grandma offered to help you. I continued the details, coming back clearly now, but she had conditions. You would need to show her a budget and start paying down your debt responsibly. She even offered to pay for financial counseling for you, but you got angry and left without even eating the lemon bars she'd made. She cried when she told me about it." The room went silent. My father looked at Sarah Boyd with a question in his eyes, but she avoided his gaze. "Is that true?" he finally asked. "Because you are acting like one," I said, my voice rising. My anger echoed in the quiet room. "Your entire adult life, and we've all enabled it, including me. But I'm done." I stood up, the wooden chair scraping loudly. Helen Dupree left me her Craftsman property. She knew. She knew if it went to Sarah, it'd be mortgaged within a year, or sold for some get-rich-quick scheme. My mother gasped. "How dare you? How dare you?" I fired back. The rain scent from an open window did nothing to clear the stifling air. "She's been gone 2 weeks, and you're already bulldozing her wishes, because God forbid Sarah ever faces a single consequence?" My Frank Boyd stood, his face flushed. "That's enough, Leah. Here's the deal. You sign those papers for your sister, or you are no longer a part of this family. It's that simple." His ultimatum hung there, brutal, final. I saw my future in their stern faces, a lifetime of my needs sacrificed for her wants. Without a word, I grabbed my purse and walked out. My mom called after me, "Leah!" I didn't stop, I just drove. Tears blurred the streetlights. I'd lost them. I ended up on a park bench in the dark, the rustle of a lone leaf the only sound. I was still there an hour later when headlights cut through the night. A car door slammed. It was my Frank Boyd, and my mom, and Sarah? My heart sank. They'd come to finish it. But before anyone could speak, Sarah stepped forward. Her smugness was gone, replaced by something shaky, uncertain. She pulled a folded, yellowed note from her pocket. The air went still. The only sound was the distant hum of the city. Sarah's hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. She took a shaky breath and began to read aloud. "My dearest Sarah," she read, her voice barely a whisper. "If you're reading this, the lawyers have given it to you. I had them hold it, just in case—" She paused, swallowing hard. "Just in case your father and Leah ever came to blows over this old property." A cold dread washed over me. What was this? "The truth is," Sarah continued, her voice gaining a little strength, "the property was never the real inheritance. The real treasure isn't the property. It's what's buried beneath the old oak tree in the backyard, the box your grandfather left for me. I always intended it for you, Sarah, to finally tell you the truth about where you came from." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. The note fluttered in her grip. My Frank Boyd's assertive demeanor completely vanished, replaced by pure, unguarded shock. He looked from the note to my mother, whose face had gone pale. The emotional charge in the air shifted violently. Every assumption we'd fought over, every harsh word, was now thrown into a deep, profound doubt. Sarah finally looked up from the note, her eyes glistening with tears I'd never seen before. They weren't tears of anger or entitlement. They were tears of utter confusion. "What is she talking about?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Frank Boyd, what is this? Where did I come from?" My phone buzzed on the bench. Mom. Again. I ignored it. Then a text from Frank Boyd lit up the screen. "Your mother is very upset. Call us when you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable. That word. I was always expected to be the reasonable one. The one to bend, to break, to give in. Did anyone ever stop to ask what I needed? I sat until the park grew cold and silent. I finally drove home and fell into bed, my clothes still on. I was so drained, I slept a dreamless sleep for the first time since Helen died. I woke up with puffy eyes, but also this weird, quiet calm. The scent of rain from last night still hung in the air. I was making coffee when a memory surfaced. A final, fragile conversation with Grandma Helen. Her voice was so weak, but her eyes held mine. "Leah," she'd whispered, "I've put something away for you. When the time comes, look in our book. You'll know what to do." Our book. It had to be the old copy of Pride and Prejudice, the one we read together every summer. I'd kept it on my shelf, a piece of her I couldn't let go. My hands trembled as I pulled the worn hardcover down. I carefully turned the pages, each one smelling like her home, like apple crumble bars and faded perfume. Nothing, just her familiar notes in the margins. Then I reached her favorite chapter, where Elizabeth tells Mr. Darcy off. An envelope, thin and crisp, was tucked right there. My name was written on the front in her beautiful looping script. My heart was ringing in my ears. I unfolded the note inside. "My dearest Leah," it began, "if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have found yourself in exactly the situation I feared you might. I know your father and mother well, and I know your sister Sarah Boyd perhaps better than she realizes. By now, they have likely demanded that you turn over the property to Sarah Boyd for the family, and you are torn between honoring my wishes and keeping peace with the people you love. First, I want you to know that the property is yours without conditions or expectations. What you choose to do with it is entirely your decision, and I will not think less of you no matter what you decide. But I hope you will indulge an old woman's last bit of advice. Throughout your life, I have watched you sacrifice your own happiness and needs to keep others content. I've seen you give in to Sarah Boyd's demands since you were both small children. I've seen you accept your parents' favoritism without complaint. I've seen you put your own dreams on hold to be there for others who would not do the same for you. Cassie, my sweet girl, your compassion is your greatest strength, but when misused, it becomes your greatest vulnerability. There are people in this world, even people we love, who will take and take until there is nothing left if we allow them to do so. Sarah Boyd came to see me last year, not out of concern for my well-being, but because she needed money. When I suggested that I would help her, if she would take steps toward financial responsibility, she became angry. She told me that I owed her because I had always favored you. She said that the least I could do was make things fair by giving her money without strings attached. What Sarah Boyd fails to understand is that love is not about keeping score or making things even. It's about building relationships based on mutual respect and care. The bond you and I share wasn't created by DNA or obligation. It was built Sunday by Sunday, conversation by conversation, through shared laughter and tears and the simple gift of your presence in my life. I have left Sarah Boyd a sum that I believe is generous considering our relationship. I have left you my home because you are the one who helped make it a home. Even as my body was failing me, it is my hope that you will fill it with the same love and warmth that you brought to my final years. But more than the property itself, I hope I have left you with the courage to stand firm in your own worth. You do not exist to fix Sarah Boyd's problems or to fulfill your parents' expectations. You exist to live your own life with joy and purpose. If they cannot accept your right to the inheritance I have freely given, then perhaps it is time to create some distance, not out of anger or resentment, but out of self-preservation and respect for your own needs. Remember what we read together in Austin. I am only resolved to act in that manner which will, in my own opinion, constitute my happiness. It is time for you to constitute your own happiness, my darling girl, even if others do not understand. I am so proud of the woman you have become, and I am at peace knowing that my home will be in the care of someone who truly loved it, and me for all the right reasons. All my love, Helen Dupree. By the time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my face, but they were different from the tears of the night before. These were tears of release, of recognition, of a truth I had always known, but had never been brave enough to acknowledge. Grandma Eleanor had seen it all, the pattern of my giving in, of Sarah Boyd taking of my parents, enabling the cycle. And in her final act of love, she had not only given me her home, but also permission to break the pattern that had defined my family relationships for so long. I read the note 3 more times each reading, strengthening my resolve. Then I sent a text message to my parents and Sarah Boyd. We need to talk, all of us, tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Grandma's property. Please be on time. My mother immediately called, but I let it go to voicemail. This conversation needed to happen in person, and I needed time to prepare. Moonlight crept across the bedroom floor, catching on half-unpacked boxes and a framed sepia photo of Helen, her gaze steady, almost knowing. Leah's phone chimed once, low and urgent. She hesitated, heart pounding, already dreading that text. Just as she moved to check it, a floorboard outside the room groaned. Was she really alone in the property tonight? What final question would she be forced to answer in the morning? She spent the day gathering proof. Medical leave paperwork, a decade of Sunday photos, the scent of rain and apple crumble bars still clinging to the memory. Her lawyer's notes arrived, echoing Helen's fierce wish. She anticipated this pressure, Leah. She wanted me to support you. That night, she slept in the Craftsman property for the first time, not in Helen's room. Not yet. But a deep peace settled over her. The quiet rustle of an oak leaf against the window felt like a whispered promise. She was home. By 1:30 p.m., the property was spotless. Sunlight warmed the polished floors. Fresh flowers stood watch on the coffee table. Her parents arrived at 2, sharp. Sarah was 15 minutes late and alone. "Thank you for coming," Leah began, her voice clear and steady in the formal living room. "I apologize for walking out, but we need to clear the air about the property. For good." As Ila Monroe stood in her grandmother Helen Dupree's beloved Craftsman property, memories surged like the scent of lavender lingering in the air. Each whir of the washing machine brought back sunlit afternoons where Helen gently taught her the intricacies of life, all while folding linen in that cozy old laundry room. Leah could almost hear her grandmother's reassuring hum, feel the warmth of her hands on her shoulders. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of love and nostalgia, she felt a powerful resolve rise within her. The clock ticked towards their family meeting, each second heavy with tension. Leah had summoned her parents and her sister Sarah, but the weight of history loomed large. What would they say when she stood her ground? They arrived, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words and unclaimed emotions. "I've given this a lot of thought," Leah began, her voice steady, cutting through the thickening silence. With careful determination, she laid it all out. "I will not be signing over Grandma's property to Sarah Boyd or anyone else. I will be keeping it as she intended." Sarah Boyd leaned forward, disbelief painting her features. "You selfish—" "Let me finish," Leah interrupted, a surprising firmness in her tone. "This is not about selfishness. It's about honoring Grandma's wishes and breaking this cycle that has done nothing but tear us apart." Leah pulled out the note Helen had left her. "She wanted me to have the strength to stand up for myself." With a deep breath, she began reading aloud. Each word resonated with the love and wisdom Helen had poured into every stroke of her pen. When Leah finished, the room fell silent. Her mother's face twisted in anger. "I can't believe she would write such things. This is manipulation from beyond the grave." "It's the truth, Mom," Leah replied quietly, the pain of the past echoing in her voice. "And you know it." Her father's voice, typically authoritative, now bore a note of uncertainty. "Your sister needs this property more than you do." "No," Leah said, choosing her words carefully. "What Sarah Boyd truly needs is to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet. We have to stop solving her problems for her." "Easy for you to say," Sarah Boyd snapped back, bitterness dripping from her words. "You've always had everything come easy to you." "Easy?" Leah's disbelief flared up. "You think nursing school while juggling a part-time job was easy? You think holding down a stable job for 7 years while you've drifted between a dozen different schemes was a walk in the park?" The room buzzed with a whirlwind of unresolved emotions, family expectations, and conflicting desires. As Leah caught a glimpse of her grandmother's framed photo on the mantel, she felt a profound clarity, the strength to face this family dispute and honor the legacy of love that Helen had left behind. Would Leah break the cycle? Would she shed the weight of family expectations and truly claim her own path? In that quiet moment filled with tension, the future hung in the balance, waiting for Leah to show what it truly meant to stand up for herself and embody the love and loyalty her grandma Helen had always believed in. "You think watching Grandma die was easy?" "Girls, please," my mother interjected. "This isn't helping." "Actually, I think it is," I said. "For the first time, we're actually talking about the reality of our family dynamic instead of pretending everything is fine while I give and Sarah Boyd takes." I turned to Sarah Boyd directly. "I love you. You're my sister." But Grandma was right. This isn't about keeping score or making things even. This is about respect. You haven't respected Grandma's wishes, and you haven't respected me or my relationship with her. So that's it, my father demanded. You're choosing a property over your family. No, Frank Boyd. I'm choosing to honor Grandma's wishes and to value myself enough to stop being everyone's doormat. And if you truly see that as choosing a property over family, then maybe we need to re-examine what family really means to all of us. My mother began to cry, which would normally have been my cue to back down, to apologize, to give in. But Grandma's words echoed in my mind. Your compassion is your greatest strength, but when misused, it becomes your greatest vulnerability. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone, I said more gently, but I need you all to understand that this decision is final. The property is mine, and I'm keeping it. Sarah Boyd stood abruptly, her face flushed with anger. Fine, keep your stupid property, but don't expect me to pretend everything is okay between us. As far as I'm concerned, you're not my sister anymore. She stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. My father stood more slowly. You're making a mistake, Ila Monroe. A family divided against itself cannot stand. I'm not dividing the family, Frank Boyd. I'm just refusing to be the only one who ever compromises. He shook his head sadly and helped my still-crying mother to her feet. When you come to your senses, you know where to find us. After they left, I sat alone in Grandma's my living room, emotionally drained, but feeling lighter than I had in years. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the stillness that had become Ila Monroe's world. The hum of the new refrigerator couldn't drown out Beth's hesitant whisper. "Have you heard anything from them?" Leah froze mid-bite, her heart pounding against the fragile calm she'd built. What if today was the day the silence shattered, and everything she'd fought for slipped through her fingers? For the first time in her life, Leah had stood her ground against the full force of her family's manipulation. Yes, it hurt, but underneath that pain was a growing pride, a self-respect that had been missing for far too long. Whatever the future held, one thing could be certain. Grandma Helen Dupree would have been proud. 3 long weeks passed without a word. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive Instagram post from Sarah Boyd. The silence was both painful and oddly liberating. For the first time as an adult, Leah wasn't drowning in family obligations or crisis calls from Sarah. She had space to breathe, to think, to make her new property feel like home. The scent of fresh paint filled the air as she turned the spare bedroom a soft sage green. She planted flowers in Grandma's beloved garden, feeling a connection to her roots growing stronger. One Saturday, Beth came over to lend a hand, bringing lunch and moral support. "Have you heard anything from them?" she asked, assembling a new bookshelf in what would soon be Leah's office. Shaking her head, Leah replied, "Radio silence. I think they're waiting for me to break first." Beth raised an eyebrow. "And will you?" The question lingered as Leah considered it deeply. "Not this time. They need to understand that things have changed." Beth nodded encouragingly. "Good for you. By the way, Aunt Karen has been calling my mom non-stop, trying to get the family to talk sense into you. Mom's been shutting it down, though." Leah was surprised. Aunt Susan had seemed firmly in her parents' camp. "Really? What did she say?" "She told Mom that Grandma knew exactly what she was doing with her will. Everyone should respect that." A smile crept onto Leah's face. "I think seeing you stand up for yourself has made some people rethink the whole situation." Then, on that fateful 4th week of silence, Leah's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah simply read, "Can we talk? Just us." An uneasy tension filled the air as Leah stared at the screen. What did Sarah want now? Would this be a truce or a battle? I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Territory for what I expected would be another confrontation. When I arrived, Sarah Boyd was already there looking uncharacteristically subdued. Her usual perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup. She'd ordered me a vanilla latte, my favorite. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "Of course," I replied cautiously. "What's up?" Sarah Boyd stared into her coffee cup for a long moment before speaking. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks about what you said, about what Grandma wrote in that note." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You were right about all of it." I was so shocked I couldn't respond immediately. "Troy and I broke up," she continued when I didn't speak. "After the whole property thing fell through, he started pressuring me about when I was going to fix things with you, like I should be able to manipulate you into giving me what he wanted." She gave a bitter laugh. "That's when I realized you were right about him, too. He didn't care about me. He just wanted what he could get from me, just like I did with Grandma." "I'm sorry about Troy," I said, meaning it despite everything. She shrugged. "Don't be." It made me see some things clearly for the first time, like how I've been living my whole life, expecting other people to solve my problems. Mom and Frank Boyd, my ex's you, Grandma. I've been taking and taking without ever giving anything back. I took a sip of my latte, unsure how to respond to this unexpected vulnerability from my usually defensive sister. Anyway, Sarah Boyd continued, "I got a job, a real one with benefits and everything. Administrative assistant at Valley Medical Center. It's entry level, but it's a start. And I've applied for some night classes at the community college." "Sarah Boyd, that's great," I said, genuinely impressed. "I also found a more affordable apartment. It's smaller, but it's in a better school district for the kids." She hesitated, then added, "I used the money Grandma left me for the security deposit and first month's rent. It's the first time I've ever used money for what it was intended for instead of blowing it on something stupid." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you." "I really am." "Don't be too proud yet," she said with a ghost of her old smile. "I've got a long way to go. But I wanted you to know that I understand why you kept the property, and I'm sorry for how I reacted. You deserved that inheritance, and I had no right to try to take it from you." The simple acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot." "Mom and Frank Boyd are still pretty upset," Sarah Boyd admitted, "but I think they're coming around slowly. Frank Boyd asked me yesterday if I'd talk to you." "Really? That's surprising. I think they miss you." Sarah Boyd said they're just too stubborn to admit they were wrong. We talked for another hour more, honestly than we had in years, about our childhood, about the patterns of favoritism and enabling that had shaped both of us in different ways. About Helen Dupree and the different relationships we'd each had with her. For the first time, I felt like my sister was truly seeing me. And I was seeing her not the roles we'd been assigned in our family dynamic, but the complex, flawed, real people we both were. When we parted, Sarah Boyd hugged me tightly. "I don't expect us to fix everything overnight," she said, "but I'd like to try to have a real relationship with you. One that's not about what I can get from you." "I'd like that too," I told her, and I meant it. The following Sunday, I received a text from my mother asking if they could come over to see the property. I agreed with some trepidation. When they arrived, my father was stiff and formal, but my mother had brought a housewarming plant and made an effort to complement the changes I'd made to the decor. "You've done a wonderful job with the place," she said, running her hand over the new curtains in the living room. "Eleanor would have loved these." My father stood awkwardly in the center of the room, looking around as if seeing the property for the first time. "Sarah Boyd tells us she started a new job," he said finally. "Yes, she mentioned that when we had coffee. I think it's a great opportunity for her." He nodded still, not quite meeting my eyes. "She also said that you two had a good talk." "We did. I confirmed it was, and healing. My mother sat down on the couch, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. Ila Monroe, your father and I have been doing some thinking about everything that happened with the will and what you said about our family dynamics. I sat down across from her, waiting. It wasn't easy to hear my father admitted, finally taking a seat beside my mother. No parent wants to think they've been unfair to their children or that they've contributed to difficult family patterns. But my mother continued, "We've realized that there was truth in what you said. We have expected different things from you and Sarah Boyd. We have asked you to make sacrifices that we never asked of her." And my father added, clearing his throat uncomfortably, "We should have respected Eleanor's wishes from the beginning. She had her reasons for leaving the property to you, and they were good ones." I felt a knot of emotion tightening in my throat. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me." "We miss you, sweetheart," my mother said, tears welling in her eyes. "I know things can't go back to exactly how they were before. Maybe they shouldn't, but we'd like to try to build something better if you're willing." I crossed the room and sat between them on the couch, taking one of each of their hands in mine. "I'm willing," I said softly. "It won't be easy, and there will probably be setbacks, but I'd like to try too." Fingers trailing along the faded wallpaper, Ila Monroe paused by the empty fireplace. Her heart raced at a sound, a quiet shuffle from upstairs that shattered the silence. Was she truly alone in the craftsman property she'd just claimed? Or was someone about to disturb the fragile peace she'd fought so hard to protect? As her father squeezed her hand, that rare gesture of affection echoed their complicated past. "Your grandmother would be proud of you," Frank Boyd said, his voice rough with emotion. Leah nodded, casting her gaze around the room. Memories of Grandma Helen washed over her. She would be proud of all of us for trying to do better. The weight of family history hung thick in the air when her mother suggested starting a new tradition. Sunday dinners at Leah's place, with Sarah, Leah's estranged sister, and the kids. "I'd like that," Leah replied, surprised by how heartfelt her response was. After her parents left, Leah felt a flicker of hope. She wandered through the property, embracing the warmth of the memories and the promise of new beginnings. In the months following Grandma Helen's passing, Leah moved through grief and anger onto determination and, slowly, healing. The property, once a source of family strife, transformed into a sanctuary. No longer just a physical structure, it was a space for love, growth, and mending old wounds. 6 months later, Leah felt at home. She adorned the walls with fresh paint, equipped her kitchen with modern appliances, and turned the smallest bedroom into a warm office for her new nursing and caregiving blog. The garden flourished, a blend of Grandma's hydrangeas and roses intertwined with her vegetables and a cozy meditation nook under the sprawling maple tree. Gardening turned therapeutic, providing a sanctuary for her swirling thoughts and emotions. The first weeks after confronting her family's conflicts were rocky, but Leah emerged determined. Could this be the fresh start Grandma Helen had always envisioned? Yet, as Leah tended to her blossoming life, could an unexpected visit from Sarah shake her hard-earned peace? The rain-dampened scent of earth lingered in the air, leaving Leah to wonder. Was she truly ready to face her sister again? Or was the past still lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to unravel the fragile threads of their family's bond? On a humid summer afternoon, the scent of jasmine mingled with laughter, wrapping around Ila Monroe like an old sweater. Sitting beside Grandma Helen Dupree on the porch swing, Leah felt the weight of memories flow through her. Helen's hands, mottled yet warm, traced invisible patterns on Leah's knee. The aroma of fresh apple crumble bars wafted from the kitchen, filling Leah with solace. In that moment, Helen's gentle voice retold tales of adventure and love, reminding Leah where she truly belonged. How could something so intangible, as simple as a breeze or the rustle of leaves, carry so much meaning? But now, faced with a family feud over property and a sister she barely knew, Leah's heart felt heavy. Tension filled the air when her estranged sister, Sarah Boyd, unexpectedly returned. Despite their past rivalry, something about Sarah's resolve hinted at change. Yet, in Leah's mind, doubt lingered. Was this the fresh start Grandma Helen envisioned? Or was the past merely lying in wait, ready to unravel their fragile bond? Despite awkward moments, Leah's newfound courage shone through. "Mom, it feels like guilt-tripping," she calmly pointed out whenever needed. "Frank Boyd, I'd appreciate you considering my perspective," she said, her voice steady. It wasn't easy, but Leah's voice gained strength and her family began to realize the patterns that had held them captive for too long. Sarah surprised Leah the most. Without the usual competition between them, they began to see each other as women navigating their lives. Sarah had landed a promotion at Valley Medical Center and was now training to earn her associate's degree. One evening, Leah felt her heart swell when Sarah called in tears. "I just paid off my first credit card, Leah. I've never done that before." "That's incredible," Leah cheered, a wave of pride overcoming her. "It's just one of 3, Sarah admitted, breathing hard between her words. "But it's a start. I'm finally honoring Grandma's memory." In that shared moment of triumph, Leah realized that Grandma Helen's legacy of love, growth, and tradition didn't just reside in the property they fought over. It was within them, binding them together amidst the shattering of old conflicts. Could they commit to healing? Could they honor the past while building a future? A fragile hope flickered in Leah's heart. The journey was far from over, but in the quiet moments spent tending to their roots, Leah felt the promise of what could be. As their family began to shift, could they ever understand that true inheritance wasn't just about property, but the love, resilience, and connection they would choose to carry forward? "I missed out on so much by being selfish and short-sighted." "We can't change the past," I reminded her gently, "but you're honoring her memory now by making these changes." As I had promised at our reconciliation, I didn't give Sarah Boyd the property, but I found other ways to support her journey toward independence. I helped her create a budget, connected her with a financial literacy program at the local credit union, and occasionally watched the kids when she needed to study or work late. The children became regular visitors at my property. Lily loved helping me in the garden. Jaden was fascinated by the old model train set I'd found in the attic, and little Mason would toddle around the backyard chasing butterflies. I established a college fund for each of them with a portion of the money Grandma had left me, something I knew she would have wanted. The Sunday dinners my mother had suggested became a tradition. Sometimes we gathered at my property, sometimes at my parents' place, occasionally at Sarah Boyd's apartment when she wanted to show off a new skill she'd learned in her cooking class. These meals weren't always perfect. Old tensions occasionally resurfaced, and we were all still learning how to communicate in healthier ways. But they were genuine in a way our family interactions had never been before. 3 particularly meaningful changes occurred during this period of healing. The first was a scholarship I established in Helen Dupree's name at the local community college, specifically for single parents returning to education. The first recipient was a 35-year-old mother of 2 who was studying to become a dental hygienist after leaving an abusive relationship. "Your grandmother's legacy is going to change lives," the college administrator told me at the scholarship ceremony. "That's a beautiful tribute to her memory." The second change was my decision to host a small gathering on what would have been Grandma's 85th birthday. We planted a magnolia tree in the backyard, her favorite flowering tree, and each family member shared a memory of her. Even Sarah Boyd had stories to tell, memories from her childhood before she had become so self-absorbed. "Remember how she always kept butterscotch candies in her purse?" Sarah Boyd recalled, smiling through tears. "And she'd slip them to us during church when Mom wasn't looking." These shared memories helped us all reconnect, not just with each other, but with the woman who had brought us together even after she was gone. The third, and perhaps most significant change was in myself. Living in Grandma's property, surrounded by reminders of her wisdom and love, I gradually learned to set and maintain healthy boundaries without guilt. I became more selective about when and how I helped others, ensuring that my assistance empowered rather than enabled. I started dating again after years of putting my personal life on hold, meeting a kind pediatrician named David who appreciated my independence and strength. Most importantly, I developed a deeper understanding of what family truly means. It isn't about blind loyalty or endless sacrifice. It isn't about keeping score or meeting arbitrary expectations. True family means supporting each other's growth, respecting each other's boundaries, and loving each other enough to be honest, even when it's difficult. One evening, as I sat on the porch swing that had been Grandma's favorite spot, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been tears and anger, broken relationships, and painful truths. But through it all, Helen Dupree's final gift had not been the property itself, but the courage to value myself enough to stand firm in my convictions. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered to the gentle evening breeze, "for everything." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, I thought about how life's most valuable inheritances aren't always physical possessions. The air in the quiet living room was still, thick with the scent of rain and old books. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, catching dust motes dancing in silent beams. The argument's echo finally faded, leaving nothing but raw vulnerability. Grandma Helen's favorite mug warmed my hands. My tears blurred my vision, and then I saw it. My sister Sarah's distant stare finally softened. My Frank Boyd. Frank's shoulders slumped in surrender. The heavy weight that had filled our family for years. It just lifted. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. I was finally seen. I was finally heard. This wasn't just about inheriting a property. It was about claiming my own story. Have you ever had a moment where you just knew you had to stand your ground? Living in her craftsman property, surrounded by her things, I learned to set boundaries without guilt. I stopped saying yes when I meant no. I even started dating again, meeting a kind man who loved my strength. I finally understood that family isn't about keeping score. It's about respecting each other, even when it's hard. One evening on her porch swing, watching the sunset, I felt a deep peace. Her final gift wasn't the property. It was the courage to value myself, the strength to know my own worth. True inheritance isn't property or money. It's the lessons from those who loved us best. It's the home you build within yourself, a place no one can ever take from you.